Good evening. It's 6 o'clock. And welcome to this evening's Findlay City Council meeting, regular session on December 5th, 2023. We'll start this evening's meeting with the roll call, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence.
Mr. Ballman?
Here.
Ms. Frishy?
Here.
Mr. Greeno?
Here.
Mr. Heltman?
Here.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Here.
Mr. Palmer?
Here.
Mr. Russell?
Here.
Mr. Slough?
Here.
Ms. Warnicki?
Here.
And Mr. Wobser?
Present.
We please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I will entertain a motion to accept the previous city council minutes. Mr. Slough?
I would move to have the minutes approved as circulated.
Second, Mr. Greeno. Discussion, hearing none. All those in favor that the minutes be accepted, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. They are accepted. Mr. Russell, do we have any add-ons, replacements, or removals from tonight's agenda?
Yes, sir. We have a letter from an add-on letter from Mayor Mern concerning the I-75 County Road 99 DDI interchange project. And in that letter, she requests that we have a removal of ordinance 2023-121. So I would move that the letter be added on and the ordinance 2023-121 be removed from our agenda.
Second, Mr. Slough. Discussion, hearing none. All those in favor of the items as described, say aye. Any opposed, nay. They are added to tonight's agenda as described. We have no proclamations, no recognitions or retirement resolutions. We have no petitions. We have 2 oral communications. We'll go in the order as received. Our first is Robin Welly, and she'd like to talk about West Park.
Of course I'd like to talk about West Park. Okay. I reopened a box that I've had for over a year. It was supposed to be a winter project. It came from Bonnie McInnes, the daughter of legendary West Parker Doc Wise. It contained West Park 1950 memorabilia with my parents' and grandparents' name and many other names still that live in the family homes. Records from West Park Action League, 70 years ago. I'd like to say it's the original Blackwatch group, but as strong as our group is, we fell in comparison. This group filed lawsuit, fought for gas and sanitary sewer lines, watched the school disappear, and even paid for the lights and the monthly electric bill at the neighborhood park. I guess West Park Blackwatch is now carrying on their tradition. Last Tuesday, a young man in our Blackwatch group, Wade Bradigan, told me that in the late 50s, said, well, maybe 1960, Logan Avenue was the first street in West Park to have sanitary sewers. It was mandatory and you had to tap into them. These articles dated 1958 are saying where they're fighting for the gas and the water lines and the sewers, and they were being installed. I guess the best we can come away from that is, I just hope we all have the same memory, and our memory's as good as when we're in our 80s as it is with Wayne. Cary Avenue then, the other end of the West Park, finished their sewers in 1990, 30 years later. The last known project in West Park was 2015, the West Park Sanitary Sewer Extension. That project was never finished. The city walked away from it. Here we are 8 years later, and it's still not finished. Here we are 65 years later, and we're still waiting for sanitary sewers. I've researched and waited to give this speech, and the Courier just made my timing even stronger. The city has another slap in the face for West Park. The city is now going to provide sanitary sewers for some homes not even in our city limits. Funny to read, the grant should be enough to stop wastewater from leaking into the ground. All of our private sewers in West Park are antiquated septic tanks. The systems must be failing also. The outflow is finding its way into existing tiles. Raw sewage can be viewed in the catch basins. Perfect example, Lime Avenue and Newell Street, right where the project was never finished. There are individuals sitting on both sides of this podium that can vouch and attest to that fact. That's only West Park. As some of you look at your watches and roll your eyes at me, it's West Park, exit number 156, the $114 million plus exit into the city of Findlay, Ohio, that was made so important. Meanwhile, our children have sacrificed our safe bike path for that exit. You know, they cross 2 major highway ramps to leave the neighborhoods if their parents allow it. But nobody wants to talk about that now that we're spending millions on a safe bike path on the east side of town. Oddly enough, the bike path being built is from a West Park company. The city airport, ODOT, the county garage, the county engineer's office, sure sounds like a lot of people use West Park. Sounds like we're pretty vital to the city of Findlay, Ohio. But as you travel from the airport to the state or county offices down Lime Avenue, you travel right past the raw sewage in the catch basin. Disgusting. Totally disgusting. It should disgust each and every one of you to fix this problem. The city's going to be the general contractor for the new housing development. With the luxuries, they'll have new storm sewers and sanitary sewers, shoving it in a major green space at the bottom of our underdeveloped neighborhood. All the raw sewage will be pumped up the hill and out at the top of our neighborhood, where we have generational families and businesses without the luxury of sanitary sewers. The city may have put it on the back burner, but we live it every day with the threat of it overtaking and destroying our neighborhood. We think we deserve some closure. Our Block Watch is asking one more time for Brian Ballman to step up and fight for our neighborhood. Fight for your neighborhood, Brian. We are asking that a moratorium be put on any new builds in West Park if the new build includes new storm sewers and new sanitation sewers to be installed. This moratorium should last until all current residents have the opportunity to tap into the municipal sewer. Come on, Findlay, we're better than this. You guys are better than this. We can all do better than this. Thank you.
Questions? Quiet. Thank you. Questions or comments? Mayor. Robin, hang on a second.
Ms. Welly, did you receive my email in response to the various concerns that you emailed me about sewage and water pressure?
No, I did not.
Okay.
I do have the email because I sent you a second email. I've got it here that says, did you get my email?
Yeah,
But
I know you
never-
sent me an email at 4 a.m. a couple days ago, but I've sent you the response multiple times that you
Yeah, it's
emailed me
just-
initially on the 28th, and so if you would like to stop into my office tomorrow morning, I'd be happy to print it
I'd
off
be
for
more
you.
than glad to stop in your office. Thank you very much for your
Yeah,
time.
because I just want to reiterate, as we've shared it, and I know Councilman Bauman was there, where we shared the variety of projects. West Park over the last 10 years has received more investment than a number of our other parts of the community combined, and that has been warranted because of the number of issues that we've had. And I know the concerns that have been brought up, we are also addressing with projects over the next 3 to 5 years that will address the sanitation issues, the water pressure issues, as well as the stormwater issues. So if you could please stop by, because I want to make sure we get that information to the residents that voiced concerns.
I sure will. Matt makes it very clear that for the past 8 years, West Park has gotten all this CDGB grant money or something like that. It's because we're underdeveloped. But I don't think that we should be putting new sewers in places when we have sewage, raw sewage, running down Lime Avenue. Just doesn't make much sense.
And I've never heard of that issue, so we will certainly check that
Well,
out.
we have people here that know it's for a fact.
All right, thank you.
Yep, we'll check it out.
Any other questions for Robin? Holly?
I guess I won't do a question. I'll just, I guess, reiterate the raw sewage thing. When I was chair of water and sewer, we had a water project under Mayor Mahalik because we had several properties that were not connected. And that is kind of right in that area where you're talking about. I think we got pretty pricey when we were trying to dig to put that infrastructure in, and we had some change orders and we were getting a little high and the project stopped. But those properties that did get completed were supposed to tie in by a certain date. And if they didn't tie in, we were going to do it and then assess those properties. And I've been asking for that information and it has not been located yet. But I did get maps from Jeremy, which I appreciate, on what that project was.
I have that information for you. There
Hang
was-
on just a second. Mr. Kalb, you wanted to respond?
I just want to add. I just want to add on to that. So after you guys' block watch, I know there was a resident that was telling us about the Lima Avenue stuff.
He just, yes.
Right. So, Holly gave me that information too. Brian, I was talking with him as well. We're investigating a project in that right now in 24. I can't tell you how soon because we don't know how much is there because then that's a lot of surveying, a lot of design with it. But, from my end on the capital improvement side for sewer, after those were brought up and after we did some investigation, we plan on in 2024 putting together a sanitary issue to correct those because I agree with you. If there's some longstanding issues that are having with that, I know health departments reached out and they told us about one. We're going to get those corrected because, you guys are with our area that. So we are looking into those areas.
Well, you were wrong about the health department. The health department never inspects them. The health department inspects them when they're firstly installed, and if the house is sold, then the health department inspects it. Other than that, nobody inspects it. It came right from, he says, my name is Polish as it can be, and he gave me his name, and it came right from him, and he's the one that told me that it only gets inspected when it's sold. Craig Krasinski from the health department, Krajeski. That's the only time septic tanks are inspected. They are not inspected every year. My husband told me they weren't, and he said that you were misspoke on that. The people that had to connect was around Elyria and Blaine Avenue. Actually, they connected in 2015, and they actually went and started a petition and had $582 waived so that they could hook up to their sewer. So they did connect, but there's still a few houses back on Blaine that's not. There's still, the auditor's site says there's 79 houses not connected. The auditor's site's wrong. I had it down to 35. I think I got it down to 15 that has no municipal sewers now.
Any other questions for Ms. Welly? Thank you. It sounds like they're going to be on top of it for you. So,
I hope so.
our second person that would like to talk is Haiti Sadler. She'd like to talk about smart meters.
Thank you. I'd like to first request, my name is Haiti Sadler, in case you didn't know. I'd like to first request from City Council and from this administration to stop adding the verbiage declaring an emergency on nearly every ordinance so that we, the people, can get our voice back. I'd also like to note somewhere along my smart city research that the mayor continues to say she is not building. I was getting my information from my smart meter and my water meter mixed up, and I wanted to clear that up. But regarding the water meters, those manufactured by Neptune, they are smart water meters. So I have monitoring concerns regarding our smart electric meters. On October 23rd, the University of Findlay held an AI forum exploring artificial intelligence and the fourth industrial revolution. Phase 4 of globalization, which is the fourth industrial revolution, will bring about smart services and pervade every aspect of our lives. And while the city of Findlay residents are concerned about their freedoms in the future, they very much should be, because this administration is actually ushering in the World Economic Forum's fourth industrial revolution right in front of us. It's coming to our back door, to our front door, to our sewers, to our internet, to our fiber optics, everywhere. Since Silver Springs Networked, named on our smart meters, are connected to the Internet of Things, the Internet of Bodies, and the Internet of Behaviors, it can analyze different behavioral patterns through electrical consumption. Miles Keogh, Director of Grants and Research at the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners, said, "I think the data is going to be worth a lot more than the commodity that it's being consumed to generate the data." Nancy King, an Oregon State University business law and ethics academic who studies smart meter deployments, says very sensitive information can be revealed about homes, and homes are the most sacred privacy environment. I'm requesting a report on my meter with all the information that you've collected on it from the time that it's been put on my house and all the data throughout the day and the frequency it's putting out. I'm also requesting its removal with no additional cost to me. And if there is a cost, I request that you use our tax dollars that you call grants to remove it, please, and thank you. I don't know who I need to address for that. I also have fire concerns regarding these smart meters. These smart meters use lithium batteries, which are very flammable to water, causing them to catch fire and explode. In my research, I have found a lot of articles regarding fire and electrical hazards from the smart meters. My meter is placed right outside my garage, and on the other side is my electrical panel, which I have read can cause a lot of problems. There are articles from all around the world that discuss these fires due to smart meters. I've also read that smart meters interrupt GFCIs, and AFCIs. According to William Bathgate from the Building Biology Institute, The Science of Healthy Buildings, an evaluation was conducted in 2017 and found Itron is prone to excessive heating. Itron is the parent company of Silver Springs Network, who developed our meters. And just recently, a few months ago, we had 3 buildings burned down just a block from my house. So I wonder if that was due to smart meters. November in 2013, Forest, Ontario, 60 to 70 smart meters explode due to winds. March 2015, in Stockton, 50 to 60 smart meters exploded after being unable to handle a surge, and there was electrical damages to the home. 2015, Quebec began requiring a separation distance of 9 feet between propane tanks and smart meters. Not only are smart meters causing fires, but according to the American Cancer Association, they are possibly carcinogenic to humans because they give off radio frequency radiation, which also increases stress, anxiety, inflammation and arthritis, sleeping problems, headaches, and many other side effects. It literally heats up.
Haiti, how much time do you need?
I've only
Can
got
you wrap it up real quick?
half
If
a
not, I'm
page.
going to have to ask council to extend your remarks.
I've got a half a page more to read.
I'm sorry?
I've got a half a page more to read.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask council. Mr. Palmer?
I move that council's rules be suspended.
Second.
She gives her extra time to
Second,
finish her
Mr.
comments.
Baumann. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It literally heats up biological tissue and increases temperature. So I have questions for the city. Did the city of Findlay do a short circuit and coordination study that is recommended by the National Fire Protection Association 70B for the smart meters? I have read that these smart AI meters, MAI meters, do not have surge protection and are not grounded. Is there surge protection on our smart meters? Are these smart meters grounded in case of power outages and re-energizing of electrical lines? Number 3, does the fire department have a category established in their incident reports to indicate a smart meter malfunction fire? Number 4, can we get a report as to how much heat these smart meters put out? Number 5, has the city of Findlay tested the radiation levels of this technology infrastructure to be sure it meets the radiation level safety standards of the United States? We've got 5G, smart meters, and now smart water. That's a lot of radiation coming at us. For those of us concerned about our health because of the smart meters, can we opt out? I imagine there's a dumb code that there might be a switch where they're not transmitting frequency continually. Number 7, does the city of Findlay have an insurance plan in place for those that will have EMF sickness from these smart meters? And number 8, will the city of Findlay be providing EMF protection products for the residents since we are now more at health risks with the smart meters and Metronet's 5G technology that you have allowed into our city?
Questions or comments from Ms. Sadler? Thank you, Haiti.
Thank you.
Okay, written communications.
A letter from Columbia Gas of Ohio, Vice President Vincent Passeri, regarding infrastructure replacement program.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed. I'm sorry. Mr. Wobser.
Do we know what this means? Quite frankly, I read through it and I'm not sure I understood exactly what they're trying to tell us here.
Oh, do you want
Mr. Martin?
So, good question. The letter came to us, and it basically is establishing that they have some infrastructure, cast iron piping and things that they're concerned about improving and replacing because of the items listed with leaks and whatnot. And it's going to essentially increase the rate, according to the letter, $1.38 per month. So I got the same letter. I have not talked to Columbia Gas. I'd like to reach out to them and get a little more information about what this letter actually entailed.
I was going to say, Rob, did they say who? Everybody in the state? Everybody in the city? I mean, who does this encompass?
Again, I
Okay,
have
never mind.
not had time to investigate this. I received the letter earlier this week as well. So,
Okay.
well, actually dated end of November, but we will investigate, have more information, and perhaps even have Columbia Gas come talk about what utility they're providing to this community.
Other questions or comments? Ms. Frishy?
I guess I read it that $1.38 meant it was inside the city boundaries, so if it's the whole state or in our boundaries, I guess I'd like to know, what streets or area of town, and then does it fall off once they get it all paid for, or does it stay on forever?
Again, great question, and we'll let Columbia Gas discuss their utility they're providing to us.
Questions or comments? Stay tuned for some answers. Letter be filed. Reports of municipal officers and departments.
Letter from City Engineer Calb regarding Police Department Body Worn Camera Program, number 319-30700.
Questions or comments? Mr. Webster?
Jeremy, I'm trying to understand how we missed the additional equipment in the original request. Or did the project expand? What happened here?
So it was a modification. So like the extra camera mounts and then the charging. After we got the Exxon in here and kind of everything went through. Originally it was just single bay ones, and then they found out it was more efficient. It was better actually with the multi bay of how things are working. So a couple things for switching out. Felt like it was within the same money amount and everything was fine. But when we sent it into the state, they said, well, your original one said this and this, and you guys modified it. We did send the modifications in for them to review and to accept, but we didn't find out until they said, hey, you're good up to, what was it, 89,000 on that, but we did not cover these because we did not feel covered in that 91. So the $4,100 that is being requested is just make sure that project doesn't go in the red.
Ms. Frishy?
Jeremy, who managed this grant? Was that out of your office, or was that out of Lizzie's office?
No, this was out of the police department.
Other questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
A letter from City Engineer Calb regarding the Ohio Water and Wastewater Infrastructure Grant, fiscal years 24 and fiscal year 25.
Questions or comments? Letter be filed.
A letter from City Engineer Calb regarding Findlay Airport rehab of runway 725 design, FAA and ODOT grants.
Questions or comments? Mr. Webster?
Jeremy, on this, am I correct? They're not covering the $25,000 of costs that were incurred for bid award costs. Is that correct?
Correct.
Is this a new rule that happened just recently that we weren't aware of? How did we miss this?
New project managers through FAA and through ODOT. So this is through ODOT. So, we have different people that will, say this is covered through here. So we've already had the FAA grant, and that is being moved, and that's one of the ordinances. But we have to show that we have the FAA grant first before we send down to ODOT. We were talking with them after they said that, and we said, hey, we'll just appropriate the funds to show that, that's our local match. We understand that. That's fine. We'll show it. And they said, no, your ordinance has to say exactly the money amounts in order to submit the grant into ODOT. So originally, we had that stuff covered within there between the FAA says it's good to cover, but ODOT says they don't cover that now. So it's just, it was a change within their management that seen different things.
So they changed the rules on us, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, we submitted everything the same as we normally do, and that's why it came back and it's like, oh, well, that's normally covered type thing.
Okay. All right.
Ms. Frishy.
Jeremy, who managed this grant?
That is RSNH, our airport consultant, our engineering on call. So they put all the grants together because they work with FAA and ODOT Aviation. So between RSNH, our consultant, our airport director, and myself, we get that stuff around. But we really lean on them because they talk with these people daily.
So I just have, I guess I have a generic question in general, since we have 2 grants out here that have some oopses to them. Do we have somebody that specializes? I thought Lizzie managed all of the grants for the city, like she was overseeing things through regional planning side for our grant administrator. So if that person isn't doing that and you're not up to speed, or you don't do grants, I guess I would assume there's an application, and the application spells everything out black and white. So I guess I'm wondering, do we need to have somebody be assisting on the city side, if it's not Lizzie, to help with grants so we don't continue to have any more of these oopses?
Mayor?
Yeah, I'll jump in here because I want to be very clear. This is not oopses on the city side. This is, as we have seen, grant organizations move and change things quickly. And in both of these situations, the FAA grant, we did it the same way we've always done it and the guidance we had previously received. And then they came back and they said, we want different wording to say what you guys are already doing. And that's what this legislation is. On the body-worn cameras, we knew that we needed to purchase things and then submit for reimbursement. When we went through the process from an operational standpoint, we made an operational decision that buying dual bays was better long-term than having the single bays. And you would think, no big deal, they're still charging bays, and that would be reimbursed. In this situation, they decided not to, and we could have decided, okay, then we'll switch them out and go back, return the double bays, but it makes more sense for us long-term to have the double bays, and so we've decided to move in that direction and appropriate $4,000 to cover the expense.
Mr. Kelp?
Yeah, so I agree with Mayor. These aren't like oopsies, we didn't, put in the wrong number. A lot of times too, we send in grant requests. That's not guaranteed we're getting every single one of those dollars. We've had even on ODOT ones that we put a project in. They said, okay, we'll give you up to this amount. We might have put $1 million in, but they said we're only going to give you 800,000. So we have to make adjustments with that. Like the mayor said, it does change because they're all competitive type grants. So it's not saying just because we put it in at this amount, we're guaranteed that amount. So it's just, how we got to go, we got to roll with punches on it.
Mr. Stashak?
I'm going to put in my 2 cents worth here because I comment on this every year in your budget book that you guys received tonight. The amount of grant dollars we're receiving here in the city of Findlay is phenomenal, and it's a wonderful thing. It's more than we've seen in my career around the city here, both privately and with the city since 2001. However, no one person is managing these grants and looking them over. My office does some, engineering does some, HRPC does some. We have some individual departments like fire or police will kick in and do some. I think your question is very valid, and I think it's very valid because I cannot tell you how many times, and I'm grateful for it, that our deputy auditor has discovered issues that we've had to send back and correct, either through legislation or through the order of how things are done, or just filings not being done or being done incorrectly. So the question is valid. It's worth having a discussion during your budget sessions and when you're reviewing how you are staffed and when you're considering doing these things. Because, and I've mentioned before, the way the grants are evaluated today, it used to be if you had an oops. And we did have an oops here. On one of these grants, the paperwork wasn't filed on time, and I know it wasn't timely, but we were fortunate and we got our money. So I'm grateful for that. But when this stuff happens with the federal grants, it's now, it was correct or it wasn't correct. It's binary, it's 1 or 0. And when they're evaluating for future grants and it's competitive, they're going to look at that binary number and say, do they have any pings in their grants that they didn't do it correctly? And you have the opportunity to lose money. It could hurt you. So again, I think I appreciate the question. It's a valid question, and I think it should be explored not just by the administration but by council in combination. I think you two should have a discussion about that. Thank you. That's just my 2 cents.
Other questions or comments? Hearing none, letter to be filed.
A letter from City Auditor Stashak regarding ordinance number 2023-71.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
Traffic Commission minutes of May 15th, 2023.
Questions or comments? Minutes, Ms. Frischie?
I just have a question regarding under new business for the ADA ramp that we chose to remove. I guess I feel like this is just another example when we talk carriage walks, but there was an ADA ramp that crossed from St. Mike's heading to the KFC, and we removed that because we felt since there wasn't a school there, it wasn't needed. But there's a lot of traffic with the church for one, and we also have a lot of traffic with the city mission, and ADA compliance, I think, is very important, and I think it was penny pinching in the wrong area to take that out. So I just wanted that on the record.
Other questions or comments? Letter or report to be filed.
City Income Tax Monthly Collections Report for November 2023.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
City Planning Commission agenda for December 14th, 2023.
Questions or comments? Agenda to be filed.
Findlay Fire Department activities report for November 2023.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
Letter from Mayor Mern regarding city managed annexations.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
A letter from Mayor Mern regarding the 9975 Diverging Diamond.
Questions or comments? This was an add-on. Ms. Frischie?
So my question, Mayor, is we originally were appropriating money for our portion of this roundabout diversion diamond. And now are you saying that somebody's paying our portion of our million, and then you say at this time it's our understanding? I guess I'm looking for a little more understanding. Are we going to end up asking back for it here in 2024? And who's covering our $1 million portion? Because I didn't know we applied for a grant.
Mayor?
Or anything.
So as I stated at the last city council meeting, TRAC, the State Review Advisory Council, at their meeting announced that there was a new program that the state would be implementing that would most likely cover our local portion. I have received a verbal acknowledgement of that, but I have not yet received anything in writing. I am hoping that prior to our next council meeting, I will have something in writing. At this point in time, I'm comfortable enough to request that the legislation be removed and do not expect that the city will have to contribute. If something goes awry and we do not receive formal confirmation, then it would come back next year.
Other
Is that a
questions?
vague enough political answer to keep myself out of trouble with the state until we have something in writing?
Other questions or comments? Letter to be filed. Committee reports.
An ad hoc committee met on November 27th, 2023 to discuss the elected official salary ordinance for mayor, city auditor, and law director via ordinance 2023-133. We recommend amending ordinance number 2023-133 as follows. Creation of section 3, paragraph C, to include the salary ladder from section 7, and language to indicate the ladder is only used to set the initial salary of a new law director in the event there is a change in person holding the law director position. 2, that the ladder be changed as follows: 11 to 15 years for $95,000, 16 to 20 years, $101,000, and 21 to 25 years, $116,000. Creation of an ad hoc committee in January 2024 to further evaluate the salary ladder for the law director position.
Mr. Russell.
Move for adoption of the committee report.
Second, Mr. Baumann. Discussion. Mr. Hellman.
If I may, I'm just curious, how did this come about?
Well,
Go with Mr. Russell.
Denise, before the last meeting, mentioned that the salaries for the mayor, the auditor, and the law director sunset at the end of this year, and we did not have legislation in place to, in essence, pay them. And so, if we didn't have legislation in place, we were going to come to the new year, at which time we're statutorily we can't by statute change salary in the middle of or once the term starts. So we would have been paying the three positions nothing. And so quickly working with Assistant Law Director Findlay and Denise, we put together this ordinance and placed it for first reading with the intent that the ad hoc committee would then look at it. And Auditor Stasiak attended that meeting and pointed out that there were some concerns as to how to determine the pay for the three positions, and also the language on the law director specifically was challenging, was written caused confusion, and so we asked Assistant Law Director Findner to work on some language to change that. And also to the other part with the latter is that the importance that we have a salary that we think can attract. In the case that the law director position would change, that we would have a salary available to somebody that would attract a good candidate, because the law director is the one position where you have to be able to practice law, and you have to and there's another market for that, whereas for so having the right salary is important. And so we working with Rob Finer, we worked on in the committee, or in the packet, you'll notice an ordinance 2023-133 as amended. This is a proposal or a draft, and it has new language in section 1, section 2, and section 3. Paragraph B and all those paragraphs have been changed to take care of the concerns that Auditor Stasiak brought up. And so if the committee report gets accepted, then when we come to ordinance 2023-133 in the ordinance part, in that part of the meeting, we're going to ask that it be amended as it appears in the packet. So that's how we got there. And there was a ton of emails and calls being changed, and Denise gets a big shout out because she was the one that saw it.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Frishy.
And thanks, Denise.
I can't support any changes on this. I guess my first question is, why couldn't they continue at the same of the sunset? And my reason being is always been my understanding that if there's going to be a pay increase for elected official,
and that ordinance, when I think it's from 2019, it has a sunset clause in it. At the end of this month, it becomes null and void, and so we have to pass something. The dollar amounts that are listed in these ordinances are the same dollar amount that they would have received if the other ordinance had been in play, under the premise that we follow the explanation of pay calculation that is also in your packet. Quite honestly, that is a change to the dollar amount that the law director and the city auditor had come up with, and this is where it's going to get complicated. But in essence, the ad hoc committee chose to go with the spirit of the way the pay raises had been being determined for the last 4 years, or since 2017, I think, is when this kind of all got put into place, and lowered the salary for 2024 versus the way the old ordinance would have paid them, and it lowered it by couple $1,000 for each position. So in essence, this ordinance is keeping the previous status quo in place, but it is allowing those three positions to be paid. But yes, Holly, in a perfect world, we would have done this prior to the primary and confirmed it, and that the pay would have been set at that time.
So they didn't get a pay raise? Or I don't have the old one to compare. So you said it's, just like give it to me as blunt as you can, because
It's in essence a 3% pay raise in line with the 3% pay raise that the non-union employees will be getting in '24.
okay.
It was originally the old ordinance that this is replacing would have given those three positions a 6% pay increase, and we chopped that back to 3%.
Other questions or comments? Ms. Frishy?
Last comment. I know that you had a lot of conversation focus on the law director. Section 7, I think it's great that that's been added back in. Is it just being added back in this time, or did it get added back in since it was removed when I came on council?
Mr. Russell?
Section 7 was always there. The change to Section 7 was that the latter, what is now being proposed as Section 3, Paragraph C, was also combined in Section 7, and that caused confusion because we had in two places we said the law director is paid in one place it says one number, and another place it says another number, and Auditor Stasiak says what number works, and so working with Jim in that meeting, and I appreciate the fact that he was there there to talk about this. That was our solution, is to kind of combine that all under Section 3 and then add verbiage to say that the ladder that sets the law director's salary only kicks into gear in the event that there is a change in the person holding that office.
Other questions or comments?
Section 7 is what I said, not.
Section 7, that language is in the previous.
That was added back in, but we just don't follow it.
No,
Okay.
Section 7 is that language is in the current ordinance, and that language has not changed to this ordinance. We just took in the previous ordinance Section 3, Paragraph C was also part of Section 7. That was the modification to Section 7.
But we're not following Section 7. All right, thanks.
Other questions or comments? Hearing none, letter to be filed. Or, I'm sorry, all those in favor of the committee report say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay.
Nay.
The committee report is adopted. Legislation. Start with resolutions.
First reading for Resolution 29, 2023. A resolution approving the expenditures made by the auditor's office on the attached list of vouchers which either exceed the purchase order or were incurred without a purchase order, exceeding the statutory limit of $3,000, all in accordance with Ohio Revised Code 5705.41D.
Okay, next.
It's usually adopted, but no.
Requires 3 readings.
And I had an error on the agenda that does
This
not.
requires only 1 reading. Mr. Wobser.
Make a motion to approve.
Second, Mr. Greeno. Discussion. Ms. Frishy.
So this appears to be the money that the mayor was spending to go out and write contracts for Arlington and North Baltimore / Macomb. And then there was a drastic decrease after she said there was conflict of interest discussions that were not billable. And then we've been sitting and waiting for the mayor and the auditor to get on the same page. I'm going to assume that the auditor must be on the same page. I am not on the same page because we never gave authorization and we have to start standing our ground. But if anybody wants to give input of being on the same page with the mayor and auditor together, that would be great.
Mr. Stashek.
Thank you. I guess first it's notable that when I took a look at this, it was clear that I was concerned about the detail of the bill, primarily because, for the most part, there were multiple charges to the city for them deciding whether or not they could represent us. And I don't think we should be charged for somebody to decide if they're going to charge us for services. I think that evaluation should be part and parcel with the decision to work with someone when you're negotiating an agreement. And it concerned me very much when I learned that the mayor had not looked at that invoice prior to it coming to my office. And I'm glad we flagged it for multiple reasons. But here's what I want to say. there was a moment in this review, and I was well aware of this just from my historical understanding of the city and knowledge, and that is the city is not allowed to sell water that is not surplus water. That's well known, it's been known for decades, and I've had multiple conversations with many people who have knee-deep involvement and had involvement with our water system over the years, experts in our water system that know the history. I believe that when the mayor learned that you cannot sell water that is not surplus, there should have been a conversation with this body that happened before additional charges were incurred for developing contracts and water agreements and supply agreements and master meter agreements or whatever agreements were developed and we were charged for and are being charged for in this bill. But I want it to be clear. I know for a fact that our water system was developed in a way that there was still concern that there would not be enough water for our community. That was proved out during the drought that we had in the 80s. We do not have any additional water that has come to us since that point in time, and I have no intention during my term in office of approving or paying any bills affiliated with providing water to other communities outside the city of Findlay based on that Ohio law that you cannot supply water that is not surplus water. And I stand very strong on historical grounds for that, and I want to make sure that you guys know and that I'm on the record making that statement today, because there's a lot of things going on in the background, a lot of things that happened that got us to this point. And as an elected official, I'm a little bit embarrassed that there wasn't more discussion about it through your Water and Sewer Committee and through the individuals that do have knowledge of it and the individuals that are denying knowledge of it, that documentation exists that they did have knowledge of it. So that's my 2 cents.
Mr. Wolfson?
Jim, appreciate your comments, but are you approving saying we can pay this bill now?
My review of the bill got it to a point where it was permissible for you to consider paying it. I am not recommending you pay it, and I don't think I would have if I was in your position, but I'm not in your position.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those, oh, I'm sorry, the mayor would like to say something.
I just want to again clarify. So I appreciate the auditor's review of the invoice. As is standard practice, the administration has the authority to engage attorneys to discuss operational items that may be pertinent. We have that authority. In this situation, what occurred is that because Bricker Graydon had changed names from Bricker Eckler, an entity that we have used for decades, they were no longer set up in our system. Typically, the law director's office or the administration has blanket POs to allow for legal services. That did not occur, and that is why this invoice came to council for approval. Now, can I agree that additional conversation could have been had? Yes. However, I will point out that it is well within the authority of the administration to explore such items as are necessary to get them to a point where we can then have reasonable conversation with council on establishing legislation and payment of items that are necessary. That is the role of council. That is the role of the administration. It should be of no surprise to anyone on council that this was something we were looking into. As was documented, I sent an email out in 2021 that this had been brought up and that we were going to explore it further. And to my knowledge, the expert attorneys who we engaged, who both have expertise in water, law, and engineering, have stated that the city of Findlay does have the option to sell our water, which is surplus water, under the Ohio Revised Code, and that is what we are now exploring. I also want to just take this opportunity quickly to state no contracts have been engaged. They have not even been shared with any of the other entities, because we were simply gathering how would we structure something like this so that we could put together an operational game plan to see if it was feasible for us, and then be able to put together what it may look like financially. And I believe that that is appropriate and prudent administration of the city and our resources. I also want to go on the record, the city is not at all looking to sell or farm out the management of our water system. That has never been part of the discussion. When we said regionalization as a term in these discussions, it was because we would be providing water to our other communities in our region. And that has been misstated publicly, and I just want to assure the citizens that is not something we plan to do. I believe water is a resource that we need to protect and continue to keep as economical as possible, and continue to provide it as a resource to business entities, our resident, and surrounding communities when possible. So I appreciate you paying our bills to an entity that provided us a service that is legally permissible. They did great work and who we have worked with for decades. Thank you.
Ms. Frishy?
So I appreciate your view on this. I guess where it comes back is, yes, you can get legal expertise and opinion. But again, if you go over the allowable, that's when we end up with a resolution that council has to approve it if you didn't come to us and have discussion. 2021 was a long time ago. Reasonable conversation is not writing up contracts. And you're still exploring with that statement. You still haven't come to the Water and Sewer Committee or council and had any discussions. Yes, I have a copy of the contracts because I begged and pleaded to get those from you. But we have an obligation to make sure there's a check and balance, and you can get your legal opinions, but that doesn't mean write a contract. That doesn't mean we're doing something. And the last water and sewer meeting that I attended, there were some outside folks at that meeting, and one of them was one of the entities who said they had no knowledge. They were trying to figure out what's going on in Findlay. They didn't know that they needed our water. So I have a lot of problem with your justification to smooth it over, but council has got to start taking a stand and saying, we can't keep doing this. And they find the law firm change names, but you have not had meaningful conversation to evaluate, to even get to that dollar amount to be writing up contracts. And for that reason, I am a council person that has to say the buck stops here.
Mr. Stashek?
Something needs corrected for the record. A lot of times things are omitted or only half the facts are presented, but the truth of the matter is this did not come to you because of a name change of a law firm. This came to you because the administration, once again, did not follow financial processes and ordered work without a PO that was in excess of $3,000, and that cannot be paid without your approval. In the past, and as recently as past President Ron Monday, comments have been made, why are we constantly getting so many things that are being done without the proper financial processes being put into place? We're going to have another conversation about that probably under new business tonight. So that needs corrected. Thank you.
Hearing no other questions or comments, all those. Okay, Ms. Mayor.
I just want to state two things. I acknowledged that the PO was not in place. I'm not disagreeing with that. I would, however, like to point out how many invoices have come to you all for payment this year because they didn't follow proper process. Let's say 10. 10. Do you know how many POs that we have processed in the city of Findlay this year? When I checked back in November, it was over 5,000. So that's a pretty gosh darn margin of error. And I'm not saying that's acceptable. We need to continue to improve. We follow proper process, and I appreciate the auditor doing his job, which is making sure that we comply and bringing these things up, and we address them. Nobody's perfect. We acknowledge that. We continue to work through it. I take my lumps, but let's be clear here. Our team is not willy-nilly ignoring the process. 10 out of 5,000 and pretty gosh darn good.
Mr. Stashak, do you have pertinent information?
Yeah, one last comment.
Thank you.
That was as misleading as you can get. I want to say thank you to my deputy auditor for the hundreds of mistakes that she catches on a day-to-day basis, and the hundreds of documents that are sent back to this administration that are not correct. Let's deal with it. Let's move forward. Let's not paint it to be less impressive than it is. Let's just get things done and move forward. And you guys decide if you want to pay these bills, and if you're going to continue to pay these types of bills in the future. That's your purvey. Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor of the resolution say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Baumann?
Aye.
Ms. Frishy?
Nay.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Nay.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Slough?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
And Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
2.
The resolution is adopted.
I had a error. This next resolution requires 3 readings. I think I put requires 1. First reading for Resolution 30, 2023, a resolution authorizing the use of a portion of the proceeds of bonds or bond anticipation notes of the city in the estimated principal amount of not to exceed $40 million to be issued for the purpose of designing, engineering, constructing, and improving a downtown recreation area, and authorizing and approving related matters and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Wilson.
I would just remind council that this was the legislation that we talked about at the last meeting in November, and this needs to be passed prior to, if we get to the north side recreational area legislation. This needs to get done prior to that, and I'm not sure if we're going to get to that or not tonight or on the 19th, but we just need to make sure that we get that done prior.
Mayor?
I just want to state on the record, I have no issue with this resolution from the standpoint of it gives us flexibility in the future. However, I also want to go on the record that I have no intention of doing a bond issuance to help cover costs for the downtown recreation area. I don't want the citizens to think that we're going out and planning to bond. We have had conversations over the last couple of years, which a number of council members and the auditor have been involved with, of as we plan out our future, what makes sense to do, whether it is a bond issuance for significant projects, what protects our cash position. But obviously right now the interest rates are not favorable to borrowers. I'm not a fan of taking on debt unless it's absolutely necessary. So I just want to be very clear that I do not have any expectation that that is necessary. I would expect us to set aside funds over a number of years for the city contribution, and then to leverage state and federal grants as well as other private dollars to accomplish this project.
Okay. Ordinances.
Did he have a comment? I didn't know. Okay. I gotta get to the first one. Sorry, there's a lot of tabled. Third reading for ordinance 2023-118. As soon as I get to it. Sorry. An ordinance amending Chapter 1100 et sec of the codified ordinances of the city of Findlay, Ohio, known as the zoning code, by rezoning the following described property, referred to as 1600 East Melrose Avenue rezone, which previously was zoned C2 General Commercial to M2 Multifamily High Density.
Mr. Slough.
I'd move for adoption of ordinance 2023-118.
Second, Mr. Russell. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the ordinance say aye if their name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Ms. Frishy?
Aye.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Slough?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
And Mr. Ballman?
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
Third reading for ordinance 2023-119. An ordinance amending Chapter 1100 et sec of the codified ordinances of the city of Findlay, Ohio, known as the zoning code, by rezoning the following described property, referred to as 1700 Fostoria Avenue rezone, which previously was Zone C2 General Commercial, to I-1 Light Industrial.
Mr. Hellman.
I'd move for approval of ordinance 2023-119.
Second, Mr. Baumann. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the ordinance say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Slough?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
Mr. Ballman?
Aye.
And Ms. Frishy.
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
Third reading for ordinance 2023-121. Oh. Sorry. Third reading for ordinance 2023-123. An ordinance appropriating funds and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Greeno.
Move for adoption of ordinance 2023-123.
Second, Mr. Palmer. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the ordinance say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Slough?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
Mr. Ballman?
Aye.
Ms. Frishy?
Aye.
And Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
Third reading for ordinance 2023-124, an ordinance amending Section 1 of codified ordinance number 2023-97 as amended, known as the salary ordinance of the City of Findlay, Ohio, and repealing all other parts of ordinances in conflict herewith and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Slough.
I'd move for adoption of ordinance 2023-124.
Second, Mr. Baumann. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the ordinance say aye. If your name is called, those opposed, nay.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Slough.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Ballman.
Aye.
Ms. Frishy.
Nay.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
And Mr. Hellman.
The ordinance is adopted.
Second reading for ordinance 2023-125, an ordinance appealing current Chapter 913 et sec of the codified ordinances of the City of Findlay, Ohio, and in its place enacting a new Chapter 913 et sec of the codified ordinances of the City of Findlay, Ohio, entitled Establishment of Shade Tree Commission and Tree Regulations Ordinance for the City of Findlay, Ohio, thus repealing ordinance number 2016-40 as amended, and all other ordinances and or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith. Second reading for ordinance 2023-126, an ordinance amending Chapter 1100 et sec of the codified ordinances of the City of Findlay, Ohio, known as the zoning code by rezoning the following described property, referred to as 0 Keith Parkway, parcel number 570001019010, rezone, which previously was zoned C2 general commercial to M2 multifamily high density. Second reading for ordinance 2023-129, an ordinance appropriating funds and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Russell.
May I ask questions concerning this legislation? Nothing
think
of. over
Mr.
here.
Martin has a comment to that.
Well, to start, I know there was an article in the newspaper on this, and I received a handful of inquiries. I wondered, did we have a study of our self-insurance fund that suggested this increase, and also did it go through the appropriations committee? Did it get a vetting there? And so whomever is best suited to answer, I'd appreciate
Mr.
some
Stashak.
input.
Last year, you not only had a full meeting on it, there was a full presentation on it. And there was also a internal review as part of a process that we go through on our regular insurance, where some of the ties to this fund were looked at. The individual and the firm that looks at this, the individual that looks at it is actually here this week. Had a conversation with him earlier today. His name's Hal Forrester. Hal and I initially talked last year that we should have considered as much as $3 million to this, because you have things like cyber insurance now that is very, very expensive. Most cities our size don't go to the insurance market for their liability insurance. They self-insure. This getting up to above $2 million, and we're only talking about going to $2 million, gives you the ability to start to consider taking on more of your own liability. And he also looked at, we talked about the fact, and I can't speak to the detail of it because of the HIPAA laws, but you have some very serious risk in your health insured pool that warrant a significant increase of these dollars. So there are 4 to 6 direct line liabilities that are threatening us from a likelihood that something will occur. Some of them more than the others you can refer to, and I believe that presentation is in your council record and online that we gave last year. And I'd look forward to your consideration, and I can provide more information again if you would like prior to your third reading on this. But you've never been in a better position financially to protect yourself for the long term than you are now. And anyone that would argue differently, and unfortunately, particularly due to the HIPAA laws and the liability that's been discussed in a confidential manner, not everyone is privy to all the information that you would need to do a full evaluation of this, so we would have to be cautious with regard to that.
Mr. Martin?
I was just going to bring up that a few people reached out to me as well after the last council meeting and the letter, or the article in the paper, and with our third-party auditor being in town right now, doing a thorough review, looking at the history of this fund over the last 10 years, our annual expense out of this is around $19,000 year over year. So I'm not suggesting the fund is fine at $1 million. I don't know if it's 1.5 or 2, but having a thorough evaluation by our third-party auditor, and then taking this resolution or this ordinance off the table and then reevaluating it once we have his assessment and have a comprehensive conversation about what that fund should look like moving forward based on our risks and where our policies are, as well as this self-fund. That's when we should look at it in Q1 of 2024. I don't feel we should rush this at this point. I think we should have committee conversation once we have data and facts in front of us on an evaluation, because when we restrict that for those dollars, regardless if we should or not, when it's done, it's over. They're restricted. So let's make sure we're making a good, calculated, informed decision when we have information in front of us.
Mr. Stashak?
One last comment. I'm kind of chuckling because it's the mayor who's asked us to get it in under this calendar year, and that was important to her, 'cause she wanted the numbers off the books, so she started clean next year. And with the insurance evaluator here now, based on the conversation I had today, I don't expect his recommendation to change in his view of it. We had a good conversation, gave him the data today that he needed to make an evaluation. I would actually expect to have that before the end of the week, and would be surprised if I didn't. So I think we'll have a lot of the information Mr. Martins is referring to, if not all of it, prior to your next meeting. So I don't see a reason to table it from my perspective, being you'd be able to have ample consideration and actually likely have the data or some data or an opinion at the very least that you can use to make your decision on. So,
Mr. Russell?
Thanks for that, Jim. Can you, when you get that information, send that out, ASAP, so that we have time to digest? And if you think we're not going to get it for some reason, just let us know that too.
Happy to do that.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Mayor?
You are correct. I did originally say if we're going to do this, let's do it by the end of the year so we have a fresh start. After discussing with Rob, I would agree, though. I think that having a more thorough review is beneficial. So I'm fine holding and waiting until we hear from Hal. But I've been digging into this a little bit more and discussing and trying to understand. And I would agree, if there is a justifiable reason that really benefits the city to restrict the cash versus holding it in the general fund and knowing that we have it available both for the self-insurance fund or other benefit, I think that that's just worth better understanding.
Ms. Frishy?
I'm just curious, we're talking about better understanding. Are the three of you, meaning the mayor, the auditor, and safety service director, are you guys sitting down and getting a better understanding together and being on the same page, or have we not had those discussions?
Mayor?
So when the auditor submitted the legislation, I had originally said, go ahead and submit it, and he said, let's do $1 million. And I said, yeah, that sounds fine. And then I thought about it more. And then I was like, wait a second, I remember this conversation from last time. And there were real reasons that I didn't support it then. As the auditor stated now, Hal, our third-party auditor for the insurance, is here now. There is a meeting scheduled next week where we will go over that report with him. So we should have that information, and the three of us will get together to gather that information, or at least a combination of the three of us will be there, and then we'll go from there. So just want you all to be aware that it is possible at the third reading that I would request it be tabled and additional vetting be complete. Or removed, die, let it, that's what I mean.
Mr. Hellman?
Yeah, I've got a quick question. Are these self-insured funds invested separately, or are they just stored in a shoebox in somebody's desk drawer? How are these handled?
Mr. Stashak?
I could assure you the investments are not in a shoebox in my home or anybody else's.
That's comforting.
So the general public could know. We are following the government finance officer's best practices for how we handle investments, and that includes custodial services and how investments are brokered out. So we're very, very cautious. And the nice thing to know, and I'm kind of glad you asked because it gives me a chance to say it, we actually instantaneously swap dollars for, whether it be a treasury bill or a CD or whatever. There is no risk to our money even for a millisecond, the way I have that in place. Our investments, however, are pooled. And what I mean by that is we partition off and we are accounting for those investments based on where interest should go to, whether it be your general fund, your water fund, your sewer fund, cemetery, or in this case, the self-insurance fund. So they are pooled in how they're done, but they are accounted for individually, and they're booked individually using modified accrual as is proper under CAP.
That's helpful, thank you, and comforting.
Next.
Second reading for ordinance 2023-130, an ordinance appropriating funds and declaring an emergency. Second reading for ordinance 2023-131, an ordinance appropriating and transferring funds and declaring an emergency. Second reading for ordinance 2023-132, an ordinance authorizing the mayor, service safety director, and/or city engineer of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to advertise for bids where required and enter into contracts to improve a stone bike path along the Blanchard River, project number 319-34600, appropriating funds from the Ohio Department of Natural Resources through the Recreational Trails Program and declaring an emergency. First reading for ordinance 2023-133, an ordinance establishing the salaries for the mayor, auditor, and director of law of the city of Findlay, Ohio, beginning January 1st, 2024, and ending December 31st, 2027, and repealing all other ordinances and/or parts of ordinances in conflict here, where to, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Russell.
Point of clarification, this is a second reading or first? It was on the agenda last month or last week or
It
meeting?
is second.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Russell.
Seeing as though the ad hoc committee report was accepted, I would move that this ordinance be amended as with the draft amended ordinance that is in our packet.
Second, Mr. Baumann. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the amendment as described earlier, say aye.
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 No, I'm sorry. I have to call roll call.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Slough?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki? Aye. Mr. Wopser?
Aye.
Mr. Ballman?
Aye.
Ms. Frishy?
Nay.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
And Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
The ordinance is amended.
Second reading for ordinance 2023-134, an ordinance adding new section V6(8) through C and V7 to the current rules and regulations of the City of Findlay, Ohio, Findlay Water and Wastewater Departments of Chapter 6109 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Findlay, Ohio, under Ohio Revised Code Section 743.01 through 743.04, Chapter 6109 Safe Drinking Water, Chapter 6111 Water Pollution, and 3745-95 of the Ohio Administrative Code and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Russell.
Water and Sewer Committee met at 5 p.m. tonight to discuss this. We've asked the administration to make some tweaks to this amendment to further clarify the language, but in essence, this is going to ensure that the two parts of our water rules, the water and sewer rules, are in sync with practices, and that ensures that what was done with the water in the water transmitter project with syncing up the bills once the transmitters project was complete, making sure that that is valid, and also ensuring that our the process we have in place, the processes that we have in place to help folks who are falling behind on their bills and giving them payment plans is in sync with our water rules, and you'll see this as an amended ordinance on the agenda for our next meeting in December.
First reading for ordinance 2023-135, an ordinance appropriating and transferring funds and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Russell.
Seeing as though this is a smaller amount of money and it is paying for something that we have already purchased and ensures that from an accounting standpoint things are copacetic, I would move that council statutory rules be suspended and ordinance 2023-135 be given its second and third reading.
Second, Mr. Niemeyer. All those in favor of suspension of the rules, say aye. Name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Slough?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
Mr. Ballman?
Aye.
Ms. Frishy?
Nay.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Aye.
And Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Council rules have been suspended, and the clerk will give this ordinance its second and third reading.
Ordinance 2023-135, ordinance 2023-135.
Mr. Russell.
Move for adoption of ordinance 2023-135.
Second, Mr. Greeno. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of the ordinance, say aye. If your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Slough?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
Mr. Ballman?
Aye.
Ms. Frishy?
Aye.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
And Mr. Russell?
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
First reading for ordinance 2023-136. An ordinance authorizing the mayor, service safety director, and/or city engineer of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to apply for the Water and Wastewater Infrastructure Grant Program and sign any and all applicable grant agreement or agreements or related documents and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Palmer.
Since this is just a grant application, does not require us to appropriate any money, and so we can meet any deadlines, I move that council's rules be suspended and this legislation be given its second and third reading.
Second, Mr. Hellman. I'm sorry. Second, Mr. Hellman. All those in favor of suspension of the rules, say aye. If your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
Mr. Ballman?
Aye.
Ms. Frishy?
Aye.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
And Mr. Slough?
Aye.
The rules of council have been suspended, and the clerk will give this ordinance its second and third reading.
Ordinance 2023-136, ordinance 2023-136.
Mr. Greeno.
Move for adoption of ordinance 2023-136.
Second, Mr. Baumann. Discussion. Seeing none. All those in favor of the ordinance, say aye. If your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
Mr. Ballman?
Aye.
Ms. Frishy?
Aye.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Slough?
Aye.
And Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
First reading for ordinance 2023-137, an ordinance authorizing the mayor, service safety director, and/or city engineer of the city of Findlay, Ohio, to apply for funding through the Federal Aviation Administration and through the Ohio Department of Transportation Aviation for the rehabilitation of runway 725 and enter into a grant agreement with the Ohio Department of Transportation Aviation and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Baumann.
Jeremy, there might be a little bit of a time crunch on this, correct? But also, we might need to amend, the legislation indicates 39,000 even in local match funds, but I understand we may need to amend that to $39,300 in local matching funds.
Go ahead.
So from my letter, it's 39,900.
Oh, okay.
So it's 25,000 on top of the 14,900 that I've already told you guys about. So that in the ordinance on that, it should say 39,900. So there's a typo on that, but it is on my letter that was sent in there on that. So that will be needed amended for that. And yeah, for your first question, I appreciate if I could have this because we've already sent in a grant application for this, and this is the only piece or only item left on that to fully submit that. So ODOT Aviation is waiting for this ordinance to happen.
Mr. Russell.
Move to amend ordinance 2023-137 to make the City of Findlay's Ohio local match to be $39,900 instead of the $39,000 as listed.
Second, Mr. Slough. All those in favor of amending it as discussed, say aye. If your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Ballman?
Aye.
Ms. Frishy?
Aye.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Slough?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
And Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
The ordinance is amended.
Anybody want to adopt this?
Mr. Baumann.
Given the other items that were outlined, I would move that ordinance number 2023-137 be given its second and third reading.
Second, Mr. Hellman. All those in favor of suspension of the rules, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Ms. Frishy?
Nay.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Slough?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
Mr. Wobser?
Nay.
And Mr. Ballman?
Aye.
Rules of council been suspended. The clerk will give this ordinance its second and third reading.
I have a question
How about what?
about this.
Go ahead.
Jeremy, did you just say that you did this process backwards and that you went ahead and did everything with the grant and now you're asking us to final dot the I and cross the T? Because I
Go ahead.
thought we had this discussion not a couple months ago.
Go ahead, Jim.
So that is not what I said. We already have authorization through ordinance 2023-109 for this. What this ordinance is doing is correcting the money amounts, because once we already submitted into them, they said, hey, there's $25,000 that is not covered that you'll have to cover through your local funds. They want a new ordinance exactly saying number for number on that. So we needed to send in a new ordinance on that. So I already have authorization
So they
to
have
this.
to have the new ordinance.
They have to have new
not
ordinance for them.
us.
They want, not us. This is ODOT Aviation asking
Thank you.
for this.
So this was amended and it was suspended. Mr. Wobson.
Make a motion to approve ordinance 2023-137.
Second, Mr. Greeno. Now discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of this ordinance say aye. Go ahead, Mr. Palmer.
Did we do the second and third readings? I don't believe we have.
Oh, okay. You're supposed to nudge me harder. I'm sorry. Okay.
I don't think we even did a roll call, did we? Or
So was there a motion?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
So all those in favor of excuse me.
No, we already passed, it
I just
passed
need to give the
8-2.
two readings.
Okay.
Ordinance 2023-137, ordinance 2023-137.
Now, Mr. Wobser.
I'll repeat my,
Previous brilliant motion.
my motion to approve.
Second, Mr. Greeno. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of the ordinance say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Slough?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
Mr. Ballman?
Aye.
And Ms. Frishy?
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted. Old business. Mr. Russell.
Ordinance 2023-115 is on the table. That is the change to the zoning code. It was tabled because of the problems we had with the public hearings. So if it would be removed from the table, it could get its second reading tonight and its third reading at our next meeting in December, get its full 3 readings. And for that reason, I would move that ordinance 2023-115 be removed from the table.
Second, Mr. Ballman. All those in favor of removing the ordinance from the table say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Slough?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
Mr. Ballman?
Aye.
Ms. Frishy?
Nay.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
The ordinance is untabled. Okay.
Is it I thought we already gave it a second. I thought we needed a third. Ordinance 2023-115, ordinance 2023-115.
Just wondering.
That's what I thought. Ordinance 2023-115. Oh. An ordinance repealing the current zoning code, Chapter 1100 et sec of the codified ordinances of the City of Findlay, Ohio, and in its place enacting a new Chapter 1100 et sec of the codified ordinances of the City of Findlay, Ohio, to be known as the City of Findlay zoning ordinance, adopting, approving, and incorporating the current zoning map, along with the entire text of new Chapter 1100 et sec of the codified ordinances of the City of Findlay, Ohio, as if fully rewritten herein.
Mr. Wobser.
Just for clarification, this goes on council's agenda for December 19th as its third reading. Just so we make sure we get that right.
Yep. That's the way I understand it. And I just kicked her in the knee and she'll do it that way. Yeah. Okay. Other old business. Ms. Fishy.
At the last council meeting, we had the discussion on the 50% water rate increase. The safety service director recited Ohio Revised Code 743.04, saying that gives him the authorization. After that meeting, I continued discussion with the mayor, safety service director, and I forget who the third person, Don, it was you, for some further clarification. I don't believe I'm getting that clarification, but I did get an email from the mayor that I think she basically says to me, she says Ohio Revised Code references the applicable law because the city has not passed a separate ordinance designating another authority for the water rates. So, two parts to it. That Ohio Revised Code was passed in September of 2014 after any previous water rate increases had taken place with Safety Service Director. The legislation clearly states that the Director of Public Service or any other city official may raise or lower the water rates. So the Ohio Revised Code does not give the authority, and my emails to the 3 elected officials, or 2 elected and appointed, was to find the legislation where city council passed an ordinance giving the authority to the safety service director to be able to raise rates. We are able to find that the safety service director can raise rates outside the city limits, but not inside the city limits. And for that reason, it is my understanding that the authority is not there for this 50% rate increase, and I would ask for either an ad hoc committee to be formed to figure out who the body is that will have that authority, and we would pass legislation giving that authority, and until then, no water rate can be passed. And I just feel strongly about that for the citizens of the community, and I would like some support from council to make sure we are dotting our I's on this and making sure the authority is there, because the mayor says in writing the city has not passed a separate ordinance, and that's the problem.
Mayor?
So, Councilwoman, I appreciate you asking this question on the record so I can address it on the record and it can be fully clarified for those who may not understand. So as provided at the last meeting and as written to you in a legal opinion from one of the assistant law directors, because they were available at that time, the way the law works in the state of Ohio is that the Ohio Revised Code establishes the governance for the state of Ohio and applicable laws with how municipalities may operate, statutory cities operate. Unless a city designates a different process from that, that is the governing authority. In this situation, no separate ordinance has been passed designating the authority to another entity, and therefore the Ohio Revised Code is the governing document for the process on how water rates are set. In the state of Ohio, in the Ohio Revised Code, when it says Director of Public Safety or whatever they call that, in our ordinance, in our organization, that is stated as the Service Safety Director. So he is the Director of Public Safety or whatever the position is, I forget at the time, in that. So we have designated, per the Ohio Revised Code, him as that entity, and therefore he has that authority.
Mr. Wobser?
I appreciate the mayor's comments, and I agree. Where we're at today, she's spot on. We are where we are today. Now, moving forward, however, I think Councilwoman Frisch's comments come into play then. We can't make a change at this point, but we can get an ad hoc committee together and look at how this is done. We all know we missed a great opportunity here from 2011 forward, at least to review and look at potential smaller increases over a period of time. But I think we can now take the opportunity with the new council that will start on January 1st, the new and improved version.
Mr.
sorry.
Slout, Mr. Slout, do you want to comment on
That wasn't directed at anybody in particular, sorry. But we do need to take a look at this, and I think we do need to find a way, that whatever body will review that on an annual basis by a specific date so that council can review that recommendation and it can be implemented into the budget process. So we probably need to have that done sometime around August, September, so those things can be done. However, I think where we're at today is where we're at. And I appreciate what Councilwoman Frischie is trying to do, but at the same time, I think the law is what the law is today.
Ms. Frischie?
Jeff, so Councilman Whoopser, yes. So I'm just going to read this because the mayor's saying safety service director is given the authority in here. And I guess my question to anybody on council, it says, for the purpose of paying the expenses of conducting and managing the waterworks of a municipal corporation, including operating expenses and the cost of permanent improvements, the director of public service or any city elected official or body authorized by charter. So to me, there's a lot of ors in there, and there's nowhere giving the authority in this ordinance that was passed on Ohio Revised Code in September of 2014. So although you appreciate me, which I love that you appreciate me, but we need to address it now for the community because a 50% water rate increase is not justified. And I will say then, if we're going to follow this ordinance, I would say, Rob, when are you going to raise this rate? Is it January 1st? So on the first council meeting of the year, as an elected official, can I go ahead and make an ordinance to lower the rates by 46 or 50% until we have a committee that designates who the authority is? Because Jeff, Councilman Whoopser, says he thinks we should have a review on an annual basis. I think that's great. We should be doing that because we do budgets every year and we look at our capital planning, and we should already be having those discussions. So I don't really think we need an ordinance to tell us what to do because we should be having that dialogue in those meetings. But nowhere is there an ordinance inside the city limits giving the authority when there is 2 ors listed in the Ohio Revised Code, and we can nitpick what his job title is. I am not nitpicking that, and maybe he is the authority that we want to have. Or maybe we want to have a commission. But I will say that the legal opinion that I got, I went ahead and went on codified ordinances in Ohio that have their own water system, and I found 2 different cities that they passed the ordinance to give the authority to somebody, and one of them even developed a commission. So before that water rate gets increased without authority from city council, an ad hoc committee needs formed, or it needs to go to water and sewer. It's not too bad for now, we'll deal with it later, or I'm going to have to ask for legislation as an elected official to lower the water rates until we can have that discussion.
Mr. Wobser?
I'm good, thank you.
Other old business? New business? Mr. Palmer?
Yes, with the pay ordinance that we just passed, it came to my attention that city council and the council president do not fall under the same equation for determining the raise. Therefore, I'd like to request that the law director draft legislation that would put city council and the council president under the same pay rate equation for pay raise.
Just
Our
FYI,
treasurer
the
as well.
City treasurer should be added to that also.
So if we can, if I can get.
Okay, fine. Well, per our legal authority, I can't do that. Mr. Russell?
Hold hold on here. I wasn't done.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Palmer.
No, I'd like to make a motion that legislation, that ordinance, legislation be drafted that corrects that for city council and the council president, and then we can address the city treasurer at the end of their term, or well, for their next term, whoever fills that position. That is a motion.
Second, Mr. Russell. Mr. Russell, go ahead. Actually, you don't need a motion. You just need two council people to ask for legislation to be drafted. And that's been done.
And in essence, the end result of this is that if we do not, so he's asked, I think, Josh, you're asking about ordinance 2017-119, which has 3 sections. It has a language very similar to the one that got its second reading tonight. And we're asking for the same modifications that were included with the one that we did tonight, or we got its second reading tonight, be made to ordinance 2017-119, which is a controlling ordinance for those 3 positions: council rep, treasurer, and council president. And the net effect of that is, if we do nothing, those 3 positions will receive a 6% raise in 2024. And if we if we go forward with this and then pass that ordinance, those 3 positions would get about a 3% raise, and that would be in line with the raises being received by the non-union city employees, and so that's why I second the motion and ask that that ordinance 2017-119 be on our agenda at the next meeting.
Ms. Frischie.
I guess I'm confused. I thought I asked the question if why council wasn't included and we weren't on the same sunset, and then you obviously didn't discuss it in your committee. And so now, instead of giving council a 6% raise, we want to only give them 3% so we can match the mayor, auditor, and law director. Is that where we're going with it? Because it wouldn't be fair for council to get a 6%, even though they don't have the same sunset clause?
Mr. Baumann?
Actually, that's precisely why we brought it up tonight, because we did discuss it, and we would like to make sure that council, the president of council, and the city treasurer are more in step with what we have approved for administration, the mayor and the law director.
Mr. Stashek?
Councilwoman Frischie, I can share with you as well. This anomaly in the ordinances was discovered in my office by our former pay clerk, and there was concern because it was intended by council that there be parallel ordinances across all divisions, and that was important to them. And spoke with the director of law, and we both felt strongly that it needed to come up. We felt at minimum by the budget process, and Denise's finding what she found was just fortunate, and had a conversation with Councilman Wopes earlier in the year. So it was going to come up one way or the other. I'm grateful that it came up this way, and ultimately you guys will get to vote as to what your intent was, but at least this way it's all out in the open and everybody knows what's going on, because it was being calculated in a way that was different than what I think everybody thought it was going to be calculated.
So it'll be one ordinance by the time we're done with this?
No.
Except for this
It'll be one
treasure.
method, multiple ordinances.
Other new business. Mr. Hellman?
This isn't any new business. It's rehashing this old stuff. I thought I'll try to make it brief. I thought when we passed the salary ordinance, 3 years ago, and we had some outside help, I thought putting that together, I know we had putting that together, that the percent increase for council, president of council, and maybe it was the auditor, I'm not sure, would be the same percentage as what unionized employees received. And there were situations where they may not get any increase. So you may end up with a 0 pay increase for all of those folks, or you may end up with 1%, 2%, and in this case it's obviously a 6%. So is that then by the wayside and we're changing the methodology? No? Okay.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Station.
For a fast explanation, there was verbiage missing, which prevented the reset. In other words, the maximum carry forward in a year that exceeds 3% is 3%. So for all your other employees, it resets down to 3. And then a raise is put on top of that. That wasn't happening for the electeds, and it couldn't happen intra-term. So that was discovered, disclosed now, and is being corrected or attempted to be corrected by this body.
Mr. Russell.
Thank you.
And Denny, it was obvious in the ad hoc, it was obvious in the ad hoc committee that that was the intent when your committee made those proposals. But that's not the way that the ordinance was written. And that's why the ad hoc committee reset the salaries for mayor, auditor, and law director to match your intent, and why then you have this request by Josh and a second by me to have that same intent be done for the other positions. Because we know that, we were here, we know what the intent was. We just want to make sure that the ordinance matches that intent. And the net result is, instead of a 6% raise for those positions, it will be a 3% raise in 2024 if passed.
Mr. Webster.
This morning, the Chamber of Commerce hosted their Fresh Brewed Business meeting, and the topic this month was the immigrants that are in town. I know this has been a topic that's been discussed in this board before and around the city. It was very interesting. There were a lot of interesting comments made from all the different organizations that are involved with these folks in our town. The last speaker was our mayor. And Mayor, you mentioned in there that the city, or at least what I understood you to say, is that the city is going to be running point on the coordinating effort of this situation with the immigrants. Number one, was that correct? And if so, could you give us some more color around what that means for us?
Yeah, so in simple terms, as you guys, if anybody who's served on a committee anytime other than council, though it stands true for council too, you need somebody that's just organizing, calling the meetings, keeping notes, setting action items. And so Jacqueline and myself are just going to be that body that kind of holds people accountable, tracks changes, pulls people in as necessary. So it's not a formal commission, it's not a formal entity. It is kind of just a topic that we know needs addressed and needs attention, and we had too many cooks in the kitchen, and so we have but nobody was being head chef, so we've said we'll be head chef to get the place organized and help move it forward and make sure that our community resources and appropriate folks are at the table for those conversations.
Well, hang on, Mr. Stashak. Okay, I'm sorry, Ms. Frishy.
I was not at the Fresh Brewed Business meeting, but I had several phone calls on that discussion today. And I guess what I'm concerned about is, so you're going to be the cook in the kitchen. Are we going to be having some discussions on council on how we're going to manage that? Somebody brought up something about taxes and documentation and not documentation and working, and they had the impression that we were gearing up for hundreds of folks coming into our community, undocumented, documented, whatever, I don't know what the right terminology is, to fill vacancy positions in our community. I have brought this up repeatedly to you over the last year about taxes, and are these folks paying taxes? Are they not? Are they going to pay in a year? Are they going to pay in 36 months? But it sounded to the people that reached out to me that there's a great concern of a change coming into our community, and how are we managing it overall? So police, fire, infrastructure, the schools, and all of that. So what are we taking on as you being the cook in the kitchen?
As I stated, just organizing and making sure that those folks are organized and that our community is working together to row in the correct direction. So a couple of things. First of all, as I have stated, folks that are working are paying appropriate tax through our compliance measures, just as we apply to everybody else, just as anybody we hold accountable. And when somebody's going and working at a company, they have a responsibility, the company, to report them and do the withholding. If they're not doing that, they are responsible for providing appropriate documentation to that employee. And so we are doing all of the verifications that we have in all of the arrows in our quiver. We're implementing those. And just as we've talked the last couple of income tax board meetings, we're going to put some additional documentation on our website about how we hold people compliant. So that is being addressed if folks are working. Two, as was shared, not everybody may have appropriate paperwork. If we encounter those individuals as city government law enforcement perspective, they take the appropriate steps. If it's somebody that they're interacting with because of a legal issue, the appropriate parties are being notified. Sometimes somebody not having appropriate documentation may not necessarily mean that they are here illegally. It just may not mean that they have their paperwork, and so we would work with them to get the appropriate paperwork from the immigration office or Homeland Security or Department of State, whatever that may be. So I can't, I don't know exactly what all of the issues are going to be. Today, the focus was, okay, what is the health department seeing? How are the schools responding? How are our social agencies helping? My goal is that anybody who comes here is being a productive member of society and contributing. And as was noted multiple times in the meeting, most of these folks are working and paying taxes, but they're not receiving any of the benefits. Now, we can argue the federal policy all day, and I don't agree with the policy. I think there's great room for improvement on immigration policies. And so unfortunately, some people, depending on if they're here on a work visa, if they were sponsored, if they're asylum seeking, depending on all of these different legal factors, determines whether and when they can work. Some of them are not able to work for a year, but most of them, my understanding is that if you're here under that and not able to work, then you have a sponsor that has to be documented. So a family member or, something of that nature. So I'm not expecting, this is not the city committing to putting financial resources into this. If we identify areas that it makes sense for city resources to help, then that would be a conversation with council. But I think it's from an administrative standpoint, because I hate nothing less than going to a committee and hearing everybody's problems, but no solutions or action upon it. And so that's my goal out of it.
Mr. Welpser.
I think, Mayor, your comments are well-founded, but I would make one comment. Several times the speakers mentioned that these folks that are working are paying taxes and not getting benefits from those taxes, but at the same time, the rest of the speakers that got up and spoke talked about the resources that they're putting towards this population. So I would submit that they are getting their tax money back. Unfortunately, it's coming in ways that we wouldn't normally like to have that happen. But there were at least 4 different entities that spoke about how much money, including our school system, that they're putting towards this population. So that's taxpayer dollars. My question would be, since the city's going to head up or coordinate this effort, and I think that makes sense, so we're not duplicating efforts and spending more money than we need to, does that make us, these meetings that you would be involved in, would that be subject to sunshine laws then?
Mayor?
I know that's a little esoteric, but
Yeah, I would have to look into it. I don't think that's a problem for them to be documented. Pretty much all of the other coalitions in town have documentation that's readily available, so I don't expect that it would. But we can definitely check on that. Again, this is something that really just came to fruition in the last week or so because nobody was really taking the lead, and it was getting frustrating. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it would be good that if we have meetings that you're heading up, that minutes or whatever be published.
Ms. Frishy.
So I have a question and a comment, because people were hearing different numbers of how many folks we have come into the community. Is that number, what's the number you have as the mayor? Is it 500? Is it 5,000? What is the approximate number is my first question.
Mayor?
Yeah, so I don't have a hard, fast number. I think some of the confusion comes from we have a certain population that's living here, and then we have a certain population that's coming into town for work that don't live here. So we know that there are some living in Toledo, Macomb, Lima, et cetera, that are coming in for work. The population that I believe is here is probably 300 to 400. And then my understanding there's about 2,000 in the region, some of which are coming into Findlay to work.
Okay.
Okay.
And then part two is, I think we're at those numbers and it sounds like there might be a projection of a larger number in the future or the near future. I think it would be appropriate to form a committee that works with the mayor. So we are addressing our economic development, the health and safety in our community, the stress that is being put on the nonprofits financially, and finding things, dealing with the housing problem. And I think it's more than just you administratively managing, so we're not duplicating things. I think it's time for us to start thinking, how can we make sure we are doing everything we can to maintain the quality of life, the community that we've always had. And I think a committee being formed would be appropriate for the first of the year.
Okay, Mayor?
I'm happy to consider that as we wrap our arms around it. I guess I think a lot of the items that are going to come up are not government's responsibility to solve. And so I think that give me the first quarter to figure out how this organization is going to function and identify some of the problems, and I'll report that out to you all. And then if there are ways that you all want to get involved, I think that would be beneficial.
Ms. Frischi?
I wasn't saying that. We are having an impact on our community. So when we are capital planning, when we are looking at our police and fire, we need to start looking at those things and having a better discussion. And we need to be, as city council, on that inner loop with you as the administration, so we can start preparing for an influx in our population when we have that housing shortage, when we have our police and fire numbers are at where they're at. There's a lot there. It's not me trying to say that we're going to try to manage these people. We need to manage the city and how that growth is going to impact us. And there's a lot of impacts with the schools, with everything. And that's why we need a committee.
Other new business, Mr. Niemeyer.
It'd also be great if we could mandate a driver's education class.
Other new business.
I actually
Ms. Mayor.
would like to comment on that because that has been one of the struggles is them getting licensed. Typically only a couple of them have their license, so most of the interactions with them have been traffic violations. I know we say it in jest. So we actually have reached out to the state to try to get a driver's education manual in Haitian Creole and some of the, it's already available in Spanish and some of the other common languages, but if you can't read the materials, it's kind of hard to learn them. So that is something that we are working on.
Mr. Russell.
I would like to call an ad hoc committee meeting to discuss council statutory or council's rules of procedure, council assignments for the 24-25 year, and review of the salary ordinance that Mr. Palmer and I requested. And we're going to hold that on Monday, December 11th at 4:30 p.m. up in the third floor conference room, and would request that meeting be streamed. So Monday, December 11th at 4:30 p.m. And in the same vein, if you would have input on changes for the rules of procedure and or requests on committee assignments, please get them to the ad hoc meeting, to the ad hoc committee prior to that meeting. Thank you.
Other new business. Mr. Stashek.
Councilman Wolfser, under 733.12, the auditor has ordered, it says, shall prescribe the form of accounts and reports to be rendered to his department and the form and method of keeping the accounts by all other departments, subject to the powers of the auditor of state. I currently, I'm sorry to report, I'm not getting some of the information I need with regard to our Public Works Division and the funds that it is touching underneath it with regard to an accounting. For some of the accounting, I have not had a valid report since early July, so I would request, per our discussion, that we have a meeting. The purpose of the meeting, one, is to clarify that no legislation would be needed, or if legislation is needed, that it could be requested out of your committee, so that our cleanup legislation, the last meeting of the year, is right and proper, and that we can wrap this up and get it done. But it's specifically regarding, at this point, what we're going to call the Public Works Division, because it's not a department and it touches so many funds, but I need a lot of information. The administration is aware of what I've requested today.
Okay. Mr. Wobser?
Rob, do you want to add any color to that, or do you want me to call an appropriations meeting?
Working to provide it. We've been working through trying to understand more clarity on things, because what we walked away from the meeting, it, to the auditor's point, is stated that it was misunderstood. I've been trying to talk to the auditor, deputy auditor, to figure this out. Again, this is an operational thing that we are continuing to work at. We are not ignoring it. We want buckets of dollars to be identified and transparent in the process. We want to follow the processes. We're working with her to make sure it's to her liking, and it's for the governmental accounting practices that need to be there for his audit. So the meeting, I don't think is necessary. We're working through the process.
Rob, I appreciate that, and I'm glad you're working on it. We're running out of time here very quickly. What's your timeline, or what's your director, your timeline to get this done?
The goal was to have the information today, but the street department superintendent and his team were actually running a condo down Main Street, which was more of a priority for public safety and security.
I can't imagine why.
And I was also involved in that, and involved in the interaction and so forth. So running
So
the
new
city,
deadline?
The priority was to have it to him today.
Yes,
and
sir.
we weren't able to do that. So we are getting the information. There's no delay other than the process, just getting interacted with other things.
Mr. Stashak?
I guess two comments. One, I think it's worthwhile to schedule the meeting, and if we can cancel it, let's cancel it, but let's have something on the schedule. And the second thing is, I guess the first mistake I would point out is the statute of the Ohio Revised Code 733.12 says the auditor shall prescribe the form of accounts and reports. So it's me you need to work with on this. Thank you.
Hang on a second. Mr. Martin?
Just for point of clarification, the auditor was never uninvited or invited. It was working with his deputy auditor, who manages the operations for him. So it was put together, and he was not uninvited to that meeting.
Okay, Ms. Frishy?
What are we talking about? I mean, everybody's talking. What did you not do, or what has not been given to the auditor, and why do we need a meeting?
Why do we need a meeting? That's a good question.
Well, no. First question.
The
What
first
is
question?
Go ahead, Miss. Answer so she understands what we're talking
So
about.
what we're talking about is there's different funds coming in. For instance, the gas tax has certain criteria that those dollars can be used in certain areas based on the right of way. And then we have people that work in the SCMR department, and based on where they work, Ginger has determined, and her deputy auditor has determined by definition, where certain people in certain buckets of budgets can work based on where the funding's coming from. So she has made determinations on where chargebacks need to be made in and out of different departments, and when that's
so just paying? You're paying somebody's paycheck, and they do multiple departments, so multiple paychecks or multiple chargebacks have to come back.
And we're moving dollars around based on the determination of her interpretation of definition.
But we haven't moved them since July?
No, that is not the case. We have been working through this, and actually I don't have the specific when it is, but July is a false date. That's all there is to it.
Mr. Wobser?
There's an easy fix to this. Sounds like Rob's got it under control. We're going to get it done. I am going to call an appropriations committee meeting for Thursday, the 7th at 3:00 p.m. And hopefully we can cancel that.
Other new business? Mayor?
I guess
3
my
o'clock.
only concern is being able to get a notice out in time, given that we would have to pretty much submit that to them tonight to make sure it ran. Because 7th is Thursday, today's Tuesday. Okay, well, okay, hopefully they can.
Denise, we can get
Newspaper,
that out.
consider yourself on notice.
Well, whether they pick it up or not, I get it, but we'll get it out.
Other new business. Mr. Hellman.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, nice job to the city in helping Andrew move those apartments down. It was, I thought, a well-coordinated effort. I mean, they ran into some glitches, but the city people came to the fore and helped out when they needed, whether it was the traffic lights or signage or whatever it was. But it finally got done, and thank you. Thought it worked out well. Thank you.
If there's no other new business, there's been a request for an executive session. No action to follow. I'll entertain a motion. Mr. Russell?
Move that council move into executive session to discuss litigation under Ohio Revised Code Ordinance 121-22, Section G3. No action will be taken following the executive session.
Second, Mr. Hellman. All those in favor of adjourning to executive session, say aye. Any opposed, nay. We are adjourned. For the public, you understand that's a meeting for council and administration only. I hope you notice that there will be no action or other business after we adjourn from that. So, thank you for coming.